Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Namo Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad Bhagvatam, first canto. Is that correct? Second chapter. No, it's first canto. What? Second? It's first. What do we? First canto. Second chapter. Text 26. Hare Krishna. Mimukshava Gaura Rupam Hitva Bhuta Patin Atha Narayana Kalaha Shanta Bhajanti Hi Anasuyavaha Mimukshavo Gora Rupan Hitva Bhuta Patin Atha Narayana Kala Shanta Bhajanti Yanusuyavaha Bhajanti Yanusuyavaha Mimukshavo Gora Rupam Hitva Bhuta Patin Atha Narayana Kala Shanta Bhajanti Yanusuyavaha Mimukshavo Gora Rupam Find it? This is live public. I'll finish and start. Ladies? It says public, isn't that supposed to say public? Anyone else? Okay. Word meanings. Mumukshavaha. Persons desiring liberation. Gaura. Horrible. Ghastly. Rupan. Forms like that. Hitva. Rejecting. Bhutapatin. Demigods. Atha, for this reason. Narayana, the personality of Godhead. Kalaha, plenary portions. Shantaha, all blissful, bhajanti, do worship. He, certainly, anasuyavaha, nonenvious. Those who are serious about liberation are certainly non-envious. And they respect all. Yet they reject the horrible and ghastly forms of the demigods and worship only the all-blissful forms of Lord Viṣṇu and his plenary portions. So it's saying, it's like they're not envious, so it's not that they're not worshiping demigods because they're envious of the demigods. That's why it's mentioning they're not. What?
We are not worshipping demigods, so they are angry.
Yeah. But people might think, well, you should respect it, you should worship the demigods. So you must be envious of the demigods, you don't want them to be worshipped. So it's saying, no, the devotees are non-envious. But to clarify that it's not that they don't worship the demigods because they're envious of the demigods. Right? Correct? TK? Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who is the original person of the Viṣṇu categories, expands himself into two different categories, namely integrated plenary portions and separated parts and parcels. The separated parts and parcels are the servitors, and the integrated plenary portions of Viṣṇu Tattva are the worshipful objects of service. All demigods who are empowered by the Supreme Lord are also separated parts and parcels, so they're not Viṣṇu Tattva. They do not belong to the categories of Viṣṇu Tattva. The Viṣṇu Tattvas are living beings equally as powerful as the original form of the personality of Godhead. Excuse me, this is... The Viṣṇu Tattvas are living beings equally as powerful as the original form of the personality of Godhead, and they display different categories of power in consideration of different times and circumstances. The separated parts and parcels are powerful by limitation. They do not have unlimited power like the Viṣṇu Tattvas. Therefore, one should never classify the Viṣṇu Tattvas or the plenary portions of Narayan, the personality of Godhead, in the same categories with the parts and parcels. If anyone does so, he becomes at once an offender by the name Pashandi. In the age of Kali, many foolish persons commit such unlawful offenses and equalize the two categories. So sometimes Prabhupada translates this word Pashandi as atheist. Blasphemer? What's the actual meaning? You know the literal meaning of Pashandi?
Very hard people.
Hard people. Hard. Yeah, so sometimes Prabhupada translates it as atheist. So in one sense, atheist means you accept a demigod as God. So then you don't believe in the real God. If you accept some demigod as God, that means you must be an atheist because you don't believe in the real God. At least that's one way of understanding why Prabhupada would say that. And you're offending Krishna because you're replacing him with someone else. Fortunately, for all of us, except one of us in this room, we didn't even know what a demigod was till we joined ISKCON. So we didn't know We didn't know how to worship the demigods. We didn't come from a family that worshipped them. We learned who God was as Krishna, and we learned the demigods are not God, and that was it. But if you're born in an Indian family and it's not a Vaishnava family, you may have been raised to worship Durga or Shiva, Parvati, or other gods, correct? And you may have been raised to think that they're supreme. So we don't have that problem. We just have the problem of worshiping movie stars and rock and roll stars and like that. But it's not a theistic problem. It's just it's a material problem. You know, I adore this person because they're talented, or I adore money, so I worship money. But it's different than worshiping a demigod. Because I mean, there's similarities in consciousness, but theologically speaking, it's not. It's different. You will not think that Mick Jagger is equivalent to the holy name of Krishna. You wouldn't think that. But you might think Shiva is, or better than Vishnu. Yeah. So now the next question is it better to be born in an Indian family where you know who Shiva and Brahma and Vishnu are, but you misunderstand, or to be born in a Western family totally in ignorance and not know any of that? Yeah, if you come to Bhakti, it's better. Yeah. If you don't come to Bhakti, it better be Indian. Because Prabhupada said, he said, the good thing about Vedic culture is that it should gradually lead you up if you actually did it right. So you would come to understand that there is higher beings you should worship, and then eventually you come to worship Vishnu. At least it's you worshiping somebody. It's better than worshiping yourself. Yeah. So in that sense, it's good. And Prabhupada was once asked, "What's better to be a?" This might be controversial. This might shake you up a little bit. But he said, "What's better to be a Christian or a demigod worshiper?" And he said, "It's better to be a demigod worshiper because you're in the system. So that system will bring you to pure bhakti. But what system you're in, if you're a Christian, well, it depends what kind of Christian you are, but what system you're in is dubious. Because most Christians are quite misled, and it's very much not really a philosophical or scientific process, but a sentimental one based on faith that everyone's going to hell but you and your friends." Continue reading. "The separated parts and parcels have different positions in the estimation of material powers, and some of them are like Kala Bhairava, Smashana Bhairava, Shani, Mahakali, and Chandika. These demigods are worshipped mostly by those who are in the lowest categories of the mode of darkness or ignorance." I thought that position was reserved for rappers. You know, people who rap. Yo. I thought that was the lowest modes of, when I hear that music, I think, oh, this is like, there must be a fourth mode of nature. So, Prabhupada, well, there's only three, but there's lower ends of three. And this is one of the lower ends of three. It's interesting. Why is it low? Because they're sacrificing animals. At one point, you can read in Bhagavatam, they were sacrificing human beings. That's pretty low, isn't it? So they're worshipping, but the worship is demoniac. Just like it's so interesting. Any good thing can be bad, and any bad thing could be good if it's done the right way. So you can take something pure, like puja is pure, and then kill a goat. That's your puja. And do some ceremony and put kumkum on the goat's head, or whatever you do. So it's tamasic, even though the concept of puja, you could say, it's neutral, because it's how you do your puja, right? These demigods are worshipped by those who are in the lowest categories of the mode of ignorance. Other demigods like Brahma, Shiva, Surya, Ganesh, and many similar deities are worshipped by men in the mode of passion, urged on by the desire for material enjoyment. But those who are actually situated in the mode of goodness, sattva guna, of material nature, worship only Vishnu tattvas. Vishnu tattvas are represented by various names and forms, such as Narayan, Damodar, Vamana, Govinda, and Adhoksaja. So, here Prabhupada makes it clear that demigod worship is in the mode of passion or ignorance, and the worship of Vishnu is completely sattvic. And it's interesting, if you ask the question, what is Vedic? I will ask you the question, is the harmonium Vedic? Yes or no? Is it Vedic? Yeah, if you play kirtan. Was the harmonium developed in Germany or France? Who knows? What? France. Yeah. So the harmonium is not an Indian instrument, and it has worked its way into kirtan and bhajan, and it's also worked its way into kirtan and bhajan amongst Jewish people. The rabbi, they have the kirtan rabbi, the rabbi kirtan. I've seen it. So it's worked its way because it's an instrument which is sattvic. It goes with it. It's like sattvic, so it works, right? So you can say, yeah, that's sattvic. Is a carrot Vedic? Are carrots Vedic? What about potatoes? They're not Vedic. They came from England. Tomatoes came from somewhere. Are chilies Vedic? They came from Portugal. So a broader definition of Vedic, according to this, is if it's sattvic, because whatever is sattvic is going to help you go up. Even if it's Indian and it's not sattvic, it may not be good for you. When we were new devotees, you probably all know the story of Malati finding Lord Jagannath, and she didn't know who Lord Jagannath was, but it was from India. She saw him made in India in those days. Maybe it wasn't as common as now to find things made in India. So she saw these, she didn't know what they were. She saw the Jagannath deity, and it's made in India, so she bought it, because everything Indian is Krishna conscious. That's what we thought in 1967. If it's from India, it's Krishna conscious. Well, it's good she thought that way, because she snatched Jagannath, and then she went and snatched Baladev and Subhadra. But in those days, we thought everything Indian was Vedic and Krishna conscious. So devotees were on the airplane, and in those days, Air India, I don't know about now, but Air India in those days, before you would take off and when you would land, music comes up. Many airlines play music when you take off and when you land. And they would play sitar music. And one devotee said, "Oh, Prabhupada, this is nice music, sitar." And Prabhupada said, "No, that's Maya." He said, "But Prabhupada, it's Indian sitar." Prabhupada said, the devotee said, "But it's so nice." Prabhupada said, "Yes, it is nice Maya." Like, Maya and tamasic Maya, isn't it? Because the lower you go, the further you go from Krishna. If you're going to be in Maya, at least be in Sattva Guna, because your head's above the water, You can still see Krishna. So, in one sense, you can say anything which is sattvic is Vedic, and if it's Vedic and it's not sattvic, it's like you could say it's Vedic. It's in the Vedas, so it's Vedic. Worship of Kali is in the Vedas, but it's not for us. Technically speaking, it's of no interest or benefit. And so the real Vedic for us is anything sattvic, we can say is Vedic. So your carrots, I only eat Vedic carrots because I offer them to Krishna. So they're very Vedic. And if you don't offer your chilies, although very Indian, are not Vedic. Yeah. The qualified Brahmins worship the Vishnu tattvas represented by the Shalagram Shila, and some of the higher castes, like the Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, also generally worship the Vishnu tattvas. Highly qualified Brahmanas situated in the mode of goodness have no grudges against the mode of worship of others. They have all respect for other demigods, even though they may look ghastly, like Kala Bhairava or Mahakali. They know very well that these horrible features of the Supreme Lord are all different servitors of the Lord under different conditions, yet they reject the worship of both horrible and attractive features of the demigods, and they concentrate only on the forms of Vishnu because they are serious about liberation from the material conditions. So we understand who they are. They're demigods. We respect them. We don't worship them because in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, don't worship them. So we don't disrespect them. There's a difference between respecting and worshiping. Because Krishna wants us to take that arti tray with its incense and ghee lamp and flour and water and handkerchief, cloth. He wants us to take that and worship Him. And He says, if you don't and you offer that to someone else, it was actually meant for me. You just brought it to the wrong address. Like you delivered the letter to the wrong address. All this puja paraphernalia, it has my address on it, and you deliver it to the address of a demigod. It was meant for me. Wrong delivery. That's all Krishna's saying. Pretty simple, right? So, another point, which is often made in this regard, and you could make it for many other points, but when you're worshiping a demigod, does it take more effort to worship a demigod than it does to worship Vishnu? It's the same. Does it take less effort? It's the same. The puja is basically the same. Is the result the same? No. So you're doing this, I'm investing 10 euros and I'm getting back 100, and you're investing 10 euros and you're getting back 10. So what's a better investment? So I invest, the demigods, well, you get 11. You get something from the demigods material. But I invest 10, I get back 100. That's worshiping Krishna. Because Krishna gives you 10 times everything. Or you could say unlimited wealth. He gives you what you can't get, even which you could not create. So doing the same thing, getting a different result. That's all. Doesn't make sense. What's the example Prabhupada gives about paying taxes? Who knows that example? You could pay taxes to what? Who knows? It's in the You shouldn't bribe the demigods, yeah. Pay taxes to the government, not to the different departments. Yeah. But he does say he does say you have a debt to the demigods. So, if you go out in the sun and sunbathe, you have to pay your sun bill. If you use the rain, you have to pay your rain bill. That's to Indra, that's to Surya. Vayu, you have to pay your air bill. So nobody's paying their bills. So technically speaking, you're stealing, and for the demigods to be appeased and continue supplying, you should pay them in worship. That's the idea. But if you worship Vishnu, then He takes care of all of them. Everything's good. You don't have to worship them. And there's a verse like that in the Bhagavatam. Who knows that verse? Devarshi. Starts with the word Devarshi. That we all are indebted to the devas and the rishis and the pitris. That we all have these debts. And if you don't pay them, you incur a sinful reaction. Why are you indebted to the devas? Because they give you everything. Why the rishis? Because they give you knowledge, the forefathers. You've got your physical body. As soon as you're born, you have all these debts. And if you don't repay them, you incur some reaction. But this verse says, But if you worship Krishna, all your debts are paid. The demigods, even to the stage of Brahma, the supreme of all the demigods, cannot offer liberation to anyone. That's why we have this offense to consider the names of the demigods, like Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva, equal to or independent of the name of Vishnu. Because, Hiranyakashipu asked Brahma, "Can you make me eternal?" He said, "I can't, because I'm not eternal. So how can I make you eternal?" Like Hiranyakashipu, imagine he goes to Brahma, "Can you give me $10 billion? I could, but I don't have it. So how can I give it? Can you give me eternity? I could, but I don't have it. How can I give it?" So Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, they're different. The name of Krishna, the name of Brahma don't produce the same result. If you don't believe me, you can chant Lord Brahma's name next week and see what happens. Do a test. Or Lord Shiva. Now, if you chant Lord Shiva's name as a devotee, that's different. But still, we could chant so many devotees' names, but we chant Krishna's names. That's Mahaprabhu's recommendation. So, you're not going to get the same result, obviously. We know this. Hiranyakashipu underwent a severe type of penance to become eternal in life, but his worshipful deity, Brahma, could not satisfy him with such blessings. Therefore, Vishnu and none else is called Mukti Pada, or the personality of Godhead, who can bestow upon us mukti, liberation. The demigods, being like other living entities in the material world, are all liquidated at the time of annihilation of the material structure. You know what liquidated means? Moved out. Sometimes they have a sale when a business closes. It's called liquidation. We're getting rid of everything. So they start lowering the price. They sell some things, and then what's ever left, the price gets lower because they're trying to get rid of everything because they're going out of business. That's kind of a poetic expression. Let's read it again. The demigods, being like other living entities in the material world, are all liquidated at the time of annihilation of the material creation. That means everyone, including the demigods, at the time of annihilation is wound up back in the body of Vishnu. They are themselves unable to get liberation and want to speak of giving liberation to their devotees. The demigods can award the worshippers some temporary benefit only and not the ultimate one. So, in the Gita, you know the verse like less intelligent men worship demigods. So, we have this idea that why is it less intelligent? Because Krishna says intelligent men don't participate in temporary things. Like if it's, it's out of your hand 10 minutes later, why would you put so much energy into it? You're going to lose it. So this idea is all over the Bhagavad Gita that intelligence means, you do something which is eternal, and if it's temporary, you're going to lose it. And so only foolish people would run after something that's not going to remain. So the same point is being made here, right? That you have to be less intelligent to worship the demigods because they're only going to give you something which is temporary, and Krishna could give you something eternal. It's quite basic. It is for this reason only that candidates for liberation deliberately reject the worship of the demigods, although they have no disrespect for any of them. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, Panchatattva ki jai. Can I excuse myself for 3 minutes? I drank too much water this morning. But maybe I should ask you a question to discuss while I'm gone. What is wrong with worshiping someone for material benefit? Because we all need material things. Right? You go to school, you could say you worship your education, you worship your employer, you worship your company. You do so many things. So what's wrong with worshiping demigod? Isn't it more efficient? I will be back shortly. You can talk. Vrindavan, you can start. Start the discussion. What happened? If I could worship a demigod and get rich, why bother going to work? Right?
We are discussing about demigod, we worship demigod to our karma to postpone something. So, Ramchandra Prabhu, he explained
somewhere that demigods can only move something that is vast, they cannot produce.
They can only move. They can only move something, but not produce something. Yeah. Then, well, this also brings up: can the demigods like what about your karma? So, that's another discussion. It seems on the surface seems like a good idea. If I can find out how to worship a demigod and get rich, then I could just use my full time to serve Krishna. But a devotee would never worship anyone other than Krishna, right? Yeah. So, I was reading the other day that offenses to the holy name are worse than hundreds and thousands of sins. Much, much worse. Like a sin is nothing compared to an offense to the holy name. And one of the offenses, which it's not clear. People, they don't understand this exactly. I'm not sure why. It's not clear. But sometimes people say, well, when I chant Hare Krishna, it's okay to ask Krishna, for an extra 100 euros this week, Or is it okay to ask for this or that? And then they might quote the verse, Akama sarva kama va moksha kama udaradi. If you have no desire, you have all desire, you want liberation, just worship me. So that would be the reference which would support the idea that, well, Prabhu, it's better I worship Krishna, right, than ask a demigod. Not exactly right for Vaishnavas who are trying to practice pure devotional service. It's okay for the general public. Yes, it's better they worship Krishna than anybody else, even if they want something material. But when you come to bhakti, you're trying to cultivate pure bhakti. So cultivation of pure bhakti is you don't ask Krishna for anything material. But if you're not a bhakta and you ask Krishna for something material, at least you asked him. It's better than asking anybody else. And by contacting him, you can get purified because Krishna is pure, right? So like if I can trick you into whatever, worshiping Krishna because he'll make you beautiful or whatever you want, well, why don't you try to worship Krishna? He'll give you money, you'll become famous. And then they worship Krishna and then they become purified. We've seen this happen many times by contact with Krishna. So in this description of the holy name given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's saying, don't ask the holy name for anything material. That is it's one of the offenses to the holy name. And we say inattention. When we say inattention, we think, oh yeah, he's spacing out when he's chanting. That's there, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, one aspect of inattention is you are attentive to your material desires. You're chanting the holy name, but you're attentive to your material desires. Inattention. You should be attentive to what? What did Prabhupada say when you chant? You should hear every name. You should hear. That's all that's going on in your little head, in your little ears. It's just you're hearing Krishna. There's only Krishna, Krishna, and Radha. Hare Krishna. That's all. Attention. Not attentive to my material desires or other things. That's offensive. Why is that offensive? Because what's the goal of bhakti? Is the goal of bhakti to ask Krishna for stuff? Hey, if I get to know Krishna, I can ask him for stuff. Like Prabhupada told the story of this man, he was hearing Bhagavad Gita, and in the Bhagavad Gita, they were describing all the jewels Krishna wears. And this man was a thief. And he thought, oh, I'm going to go find him, or maybe it wasn't a Bhagavad Gita, it was like at the time of Krishna. He heard about Krishna and he had all these jewels. He said, I'm going to go find him and steal the jewels. And that's what he tried to do. But he became purified because he was with Krishna. But that's not our method, because our method is anukulyena, Krishnandaseelam. Our method is to do what's favorable. So for us, well, you might say, but what about a Jamil? It's a Jamil, in case you don't know, not a Jamil. A Jamil. What about a Jamil? He just called the name of his son, and look what happened to him. It worked out pretty good for him. So it worked out for him. I could try that one also. Just, enjoy life and name my son Krishna. And, when I die, I'll just go, Krishna. I get a page in the Bhagavatam even, it's looking good. But it's the same point, that he was not practicing bhakti. So for him, it's all relative. For him, that was good. That's better than calling out his wife for material enjoyment, which is what he was doing. And then from that point, he began pure bhakti. So Krishna extended his life, the sins were gone, and now he did pure bhakti. So for us, we're already on that level. We're on the level of Jamil, of, everything's past. So now we're doing pure bhakti. So that's why now that you're in the house of pure bhakti, to pray for something material, it's not considered pure bhakti. It's considered an offense to the holy name. And you don't want to offend the name. You might say, but Prabhu, I have these desires. Say, yes, and Krishna will take care of your desires. He knows. You just try to please him and put your faith in him, that he will take care of you. Right? He knows what you want. Is it bad to want things? No, we have physical bodies, so we want things. We need things. But he's good at taking care of things. The Prabhupada said, this is such a beautiful statement. You must have heard this. The Prabhupada said, my father said, if Krishna wants to take away from you with his 10 arms, what can you hold on to with your 2 arms? You ever heard that one before? And if Krishna wants to give you with his 10 arms, what can you hold with your 2 arms? So, the faith of a devotee is, I serve Krishna. Krishna knows what I need. I can give a hint sometime, maybe. But specifically, our needs and desires are in relation to our service, admission. That's where our mind is fixed. And how we can please Guru and Krishna. That's where our minds are. Right? And I have seen personally myself that the more you come to that level, the more you have a desire to please Krishna, and the more you have faith that he will take care of you, you will see it. It'll just shows up. He just takes care of you according to what you need and what he feels you can handle. And that's love. Krishna, I'll serve you. You give me, you don't give me, I'll serve you. And Krishna says, no, I want to give you because you don't want. You're not asking, therefore it's even more attractive to give. It's not really attractive, If you say, Mahatma Prabhu, what are you going to buy me for my birthday? I really like this sweater, and you keep reminding me. It's not fun. It's like, okay, all right. Right? But if you don't ask, it's then I can actually buy it because I want to. Right? So you let Krishna, Krishna loves you and he doesn't ask anything. Right? Like, what does Krishna ask from you? In like, I'll give you food if you give me this. No, he's giving it, right? So look at what Krishna's doing to us. He's giving us everything and is not asking for anything. So shouldn't we do the same for him? That's love. It doesn't work if you don't do that, because he's doing that to you, and if you don't do it to him, the love's not pure, right? I think that's such a beautiful thought, because sometimes it's hard, it's difficult. How can I just give? What about little old me? I'll have nothing. I'll give everything to Krishna. No, spin it around. He's already giving you everything. Just reciprocate. Because in the misunderstood idea, we think, oh, but I'll give so much and I'll have nothing. What do you mean have nothing? What are you talking about? Like you have nothing? Like where did you get everything you have? Who gave it to you? So it's not like I'll give everything to Krishna, I'll have nothing. No, he's already giving you everything. Give some back. Like this one pastor said. It's not how much of your money you give to God, it's how much of His money you give back to Him. And so it's just switching it. You understand? How much you're going to give in church of your money? No. How much of God's money that you're holding on to you're going to give back to Him in church? Different way of thinking, right? Yes. So if you reframe the thinking that He's already giving me, everything I have is His, and He's just loving me perfectly, and it would be really great to do the same thing for Him. That's love, that's bhakti, and that's what we're cultivating. And that's why all this other stuff, akama, sarva kamava, and ajamil, and worship of demigods to get something material, it's not part of our process, because we're only interested in what Bhagavatam says. What does Bhagavatam say we're interested? We're only interested in what is pure. How to love Krishna. That's what we're interested in. Okay, I will stop. And if there are any questions or comments or discussion, yes.
Sometimes it happens that people come to Krishna consciousness and they get like really enthusiastic and they kind of go very, very fast in a short period of time, and then after some time they say that it's a bit like a shoe that doesn't really fit, and then they kind of leave. For example, if they come from a very like Christian background and then they go back to that. And I was just wondering how to look at that from a philosophical point of view, because I don't really understand like what's happening there.
The simplest way to look at it is through shraddha, through faith. If the faith isn't substantiated on something deeper than just I feel good, I'm having fun, and this is what I was looking for, and I like Indian clothes, and I like the food, and jumping up and down is like a lot of fun, better than going to work. Sometimes that's a lot of it, and there's not a deeper connection. And I mean, it could be meant different things for different people, but you will generally find that the deeper the understanding, the deeper the faith. The weaker the understanding, the weaker, or maybe it's a misunderstanding. Or it was, like you entered it and you thought it was one thing and you found out it was another. Or expectation that you should experience something better or higher than you're qualified to experience according to your level of purity. That could be there. Because Rupa Goswami says patience is one of the qualifications. And that's very significant if you think about it. Like, if the process is going to work like really easily and quickly, why would you need patience? But if it's going to be more difficult and a lot slower than you would anticipate, or you don't know because you haven't done it yet, you don't know, and we make a lot of assumptions. It's going to go very quickly. And I think also another possible reason is when we first come to bhakti, we're coming from the material world, and we feel, it's like when you get burnt and you feel the burning afterwards. It's like we feel the burning, But after a while, the burn heals, and we don't feel it. And so when that burn is fresh, it's a really strong impetus, like I really want to do this. And so part of what the problem can be is that the impetus and desire is coming from the material frustration. And that's not like, it's not like a long range, I mean it helps, but a permanent long range impulse, it's not enough, because that impulse is going to subside. I've heard from devotees in certain parts of the world that life in that part of the world is so miserable. So many people become devotees, but so many people leave later on when their lives get better. And they forget the misery. And they go, okay, my life's together. I'm a little more sattvic, and so I don't want to do all the austerities of Krishna consciousness anymore, but my life is better. So, the burn is healed. So it's got to be more than that. There's got to be a faith that's deeper, that comes from understanding. I'm spirit soul. I'm a servant of Krishna. I'm part and parcel. I'm in the cycle of birth and death forever, and on and on and on, and understanding more deeply. That sustains one, because there will be ups and downs. That's just part of it. There's a stage. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes a stage. It's called Utsahan Mayi. Utsahan means enthusiasm, and Maya means full of. So it's like artificial enthusiasm. It's basically fanaticism. I'm fired up, but it's not on any kind of foundation. It's just like, the sweet rice and halva last night were like super good. So like I'm on fire now. I'm so enthusiastic. Or someone led a kirtan, and that person's like a professional singer, and it's just like, it could be a material motivation that I'm getting inspired by. And so at some point you kind of become naked and say like, well, what did I understand? What do I have inside me that's real, beyond just the burnt part of me that pushed me, and the pakoras and halva and all that, which is all good, and it's all meant to help, but it's got to go deeper. So faith has to be stronger. And I think a lot of people don't even understand what they're doing, and they imagine all kinds of things, and so they have expectations that things would be greater or easier. Yes.
But what if that person is like a really deep person and is really like studying the scriptures for some time, and like is really looking for spiritual life, but they come to the point where they feel like, I don't feel my heart here as much as in Christianity, for example?
That's not the end of the world. There are people who aren't going to find it in Krishna consciousness. Some devotees will find it in the Sri Sampradaya, worshipping Krishna in Viṣṇu form. These things are more rare, but they exist. The Prabhupada didn't really have a problem with it. Prabhupada had a problem with, okay, that's fine, do that. But then if they go out and eat meat, it's like, okay, that doesn't work. But if they want to do it another way, yeah. I was just told there's a devotee who's a priest. Or maybe there's more than one devotee. Yeah, I think it might be an interview with this devotee priest. I think it's called the Hare Krishna podcast. It's a British devotee. And I believe he interviewed a priest, and he's telling about his priest life and why, and no, this was on another podcast, the Swami Padmanabha's podcast. So, the only thing that Prabhupada was concerned about was people saying that they're following a tradition and not following it, and specifically in the name of following the tradition, committing sinful activity, the four principles. So they asked Prabhupada, one devotee asked Prabhupada, if someone's a Christian, what would it look like? And he said, it would look the same. those four principles. So, they chant Jesus or whatever they're chanting, but basically it would look the same. So I heard that like 40 years ago. And so that made an impression. And every conversation I ever heard Prabhupada had with a Christian or a theologian, it was never about, our God's better than your God. It was all about follow your path. Whatever that path is, whatever your scripture is, follow it. There's no problem. And there are devotees who are married to Christians, and the Christians never become devotees, and the devotee never... Well, we can't say a devotee's not a Christian, because I think we all respect Christ, but it's just a little unclear what Christ taught, so that it's hard to say I'm a Christian if we don't know exactly what he taught, and what he taught that we don't know, that has been hidden somewhere. So the man's a devotee, and the woman's not, or vice versa, and they've been married for 20 years, and he's been a devotee for 20 years, and she's a Christian. It's not like, oh, this is bad, we have to do something, bring her to so-and-so Maharaj, he'll set her straight. It's not like that. That's fine. We were told that next to the temple, next to Prabhupada Desh, there is a group, I don't know if it's a monastery or whatever they're doing there, of Christian vegetarians or Christian vegans. So, and I mentioned to the devotees in Ecuador, we went to we're very friendly with a group of Christians who are all vegetarians, and they chant mantras. They meditate, Om Namo Jesus, or like that, Jesus. I forget, but they invited us to meditate with them, and they meditate silently. Boy, that's really hard. They sit there like half an hour and they're meditating on Jesus silently, because we're not used to doing that. Outside of Gayatri, but that's only 5 minutes. They're very, very friendly, and they love us, and we love them. It's like no problem. I mean, my feeling is Kali Yuga's just got things really cooked up, because all the religious traditions of the world, they have similar aims in terms of what they would want to see in society, in terms of raising the level of God consciousness, and consequently raising the moral levels. We all face, every religious group faces the same problems, the same social problems, which are due to irreligiousness. And we're fighting with one another. It's like insane. There's a much bigger battle to fight, and the soldiers are fighting with one another. That's what sectarian religion does. When Prabhupada was in Iran, when he heard the call to prayer, and they were talking about it, and they said, Prabhupada, we can't, these people, they don't want to chant Hare Krishna, they just want to chant Allah Akbar. And Prabhupada said, don't make me sectarian. It's like he didn't have a problem. Prabhupada didn't have a problem with that. It wasn't, his vision of making the world Krishna conscious wasn't that, in the same form we see it as just Brahmins, because you got the whole world. And the whole world's not Brahmins. Most of the world is Shudra, or just ordinary people. Not in a derogatory sense, Shudra, but not spiritually elevated. Just so, it's like this question is so interesting, because I could reframe the question and say, what will the world be like if it was all Krishna conscious? Would it only be devotees, one religion? I don't think it could possibly be that. But Prabhupada said, if we had power, our job would be to ensure that everyone follows their religion. That's what we would do. Like you have a permit to run your church, but you have to follow it according to the book. And the book says, thou shalt not kill, so that's got to stop. And, the wine, maybe we have to go back to grape juice. it's it's not a one-size-fits-all. And you even see that amongst devotees. There's so many levels of devotees, and so everybody starts out running, and then, later on they have to find their place. In answer to that question, also, it also could be that happens to some devotees because they didn't get proper guidance. Maybe if they had proper guidance, or they didn't have proper connection, they didn't make a deep connection with a spiritual figure, a mentor or a guru. That could have helped. Because usually a person makes a deep connection with a guru when their faith is stronger. When the faith is weak, they won't, because they don't have enough trust to put in somebody, and so that they often have to just I don't trust enough to believe all this, or to get guidance as I need it. And so when you evolve in your trust, you accept a guru, and so that usually solves a lot of problems, because now you trust this person more than your own perception. Not that we don't trust our own perception, but you know what I mean. Our own limitations. Is that all right for now? Yeah. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? Yes.
Yesterday we had a discussion about listening kirtan from Hare Krishna. Yesterday we had a discussion about listening kirtan from people who get fame, adoration, and they maybe commit also sinful activities. Like, what's your thoughts about that?
I mean, who are not devotees or are devotees?
Some devotees, yeah.
Famous kirtaniyas?
Yeah.
So, are you saying you feel that their bhakti is not, they're not good devotees, but they're just good kirtaniyas?
Like, you can feel their bhakti, but then in the background you hear many stories about them maybe doing some sinful activities.
Oh, many stories. Well, I think the answer should be clear. So what was your question? What do we do about them? Hang them or something?
No,
take away their mridanga or what?
No, your thoughts about them.
When someone's leading a kirtan, they're kind of setting the mood for the whole temple, right? And I like to see kirtan if it's in the temple, it's like puja. You're worshiping the deity, you're glorifying the deity. So glorification is a kind of puja, isn't it? And just like you wouldn't let any devotee go on the altar unless they were Brahmin initiated and then certified that they're following the 4 principles, chanting 16 rounds. That generally would be the standard if it's a large, you're probably talking about big melas, right? Large festivals. Yeah, generally you would want those who are the most pure, because that would have the greatest impact, purificatory impact on the audience. And we have seen those devotees who are more pure, they invoke deeper feelings of devotion. And those who are not, don't. And Prabhupada talks about that in his books. Like, everything should be done by those who are pure. And pure means following the 4 principles, chanting 16 rounds. And I always say, if someone says, well, do you think so-and-so is a good kirtan leader? My little joke is, well, follow him around after the kirtan, see what he does. Because you can't tell just by the external performance, you have to see the lifestyle. Because that's, but that's true for anything. Is he a good preacher? Is he a good pujari? Is he good anything? Well, what does he do when he's not doing his pujari work? Right. So yeah, that's a fundamental teaching. And Prabhupada always said, that will have Shakti, that will have force. that kirtan or that class or that play or that prasadam. It'll all have Shakti when the person is pure. And that's the whole foundation of our movement. So we're not, we can perfect the material side of things as an aspect of devotion, but it's not the primary. It's like you can't trick Krishna. Like, I don't have devotion, but I can really sing. So Krishna's like, yeah, you really confused me. I thought you were a great devotee. I found out you weren't. I didn't know. You sang so beautifully. No, Krishna's not fooled like we are.
The question was raised like, even other people get their emotions alivened or invoked by that kirtan, for example.
Well, the question would be, are those emotions material emotions? Because, I don't know, we're just talking in general, but generally speaking, if a person is very elevated, he will evoke transcendental emotion. He can evoke and it's harder for someone who's not to invoke transcendental emotion. But if you have some emotion and it's helpful for your bhakti, okay, that's nice. But I could say the same thing. I could play you a love song and that would evoke emotion. And you try to think of Krishna as the one you love, but it's an emotion invoked by someone who's not a devotee, so it's not the same as an emotion invoked by a devotee. Because you hear the bhakti, you feel the bhakti, you taste it. It's all over. And anyway, let's answer the question from our perspective rather than judging anybody else and say, if I am going to lead, or I'm a kirtan, or I'm going to do arti, or I'm going to give class, or I'm going to lead a project, I should be pure. And my eating, sleeping, mating, and defending should be pure. And that will have the greatest effect on everyone and set the best example. And if I can only do it materially perfectly, but I can't do it spiritually perfectly, it's not acceptable. Spiritually perfectly, to a certain standard. That's required. Otherwise you don't have a movement. You don't have the Hare Krishna movement anymore. You have something else. And the problem is not everyone wants to be a pure devotee. Some people like devotional service, but they want benefits from it. So they like to get honored. So they can do things to get honored. And their taste for honor is stronger than their taste for the holy name. It's just a reality. It's a material world. I like to chant. Why do I like to chant? Because people like the way I chant. Makes me feel good. I'm getting a taste. I'm getting more of a taste for that than the holy name. So we have to be careful. Where's our taste coming from? Right? So that's just, we're in the material world, that's what happens. We're going through different levels. At least if it happens to you, it's not unusual, just be aware of it and try to purify it. We're chanting for Krishna's pleasure. There's a lady, she's a famous kirtaniya, and she's an Indian lady living in America, and she would never lead kirtan when there's anyone in the temple. She would only lead kirtan at the noon arti because nobody was there. That was just her bhav, It's like, I just want to sing for Krishna. I'm not saying that's, we all have to do that, but it was interesting. She said, I can just focus on Krishna now, there's nobody here. I don't need anybody. But if you bring 1,000 people in the temple, I'm fired up. Now I can show my stuff. Get the cameras out, everyone. Making the videos. Put it on YouTube. That's we might do that for preaching, for sure, but our motive should be to help people. Have to be careful. Okay. Party's over. Srimad Bhagvatam ki jai, Jai Go Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.